Fortunately, there goes the drinks trolley, and Susie, live from the pub, has selected what for our beverage of the day?
Well, I've gone for a very lovely blackcurrant sparkling water, which is delicious.
Okay.
Sparkling water?
Yeah,
No,
plain sparkling
with
water.
a black currant.
Oh, with the black currant in it?
Yes.
Oh, they're lovely. Yes.
Could Matt have cassis instead?
You could have cassis if you wanted to, but drink responsibly, and you don't always need an alcoholic drink.
That's so
Another
true.
Right, Matt.
So true, actually, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Just
think about
remember
that,
that,
maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. Wise words.
lots of
Wise
Very
words indeed, yeah.
Today's confession comes from Martin. I think we can say Martin in Belfast. Father Simon, brother Matt, sisters Susie and Holly. My confession comes from the late 80s, when I was a sixth former and attended school in Belfast. I was a young lad interested in music, and when a well-known national radio station of the day announced they were running a school pop quiz competition, a couple of schoolmates and I decided to put a team together and enter. The quiz was to be hosted by an up-and-coming DJ, making his name with this aforementioned radio station. After a rigorous selection process, we were delighted to hear that we were selected to represent our region and go forward to the live show recordings. We were drawn against a school in London, and excitedly off we travelled to England for the contest. The quiz was recorded in the host school's assembly hall with an audience of school kids and consisted of various rounds of music questions, both team questions and individual questions, and finished with a quick-fire buzzer round. After a fairly tight contest going into the final buzzer round, the scores were tied. The frenetic buzzer round went so fast I lost track of who was winning. So when the up-and-coming DJ received the final score from the production assistant, everyone was waiting with bated breath for the final score. The anticipation turned to disappointment as it was announced that we had sadly been beaten by a single point and we had to bow out of the competition. As we said our goodbyes to the other team and the production crew, I cheekily asked the up-and-coming DJ for a copy of the script and quiz questions as a souvenir of our time on the quiz. The script contained all the questions asked on the day and a big bumper selection of buzzer-round questions, not all of which were asked on the day. He not only obliged, he also autographed the script for good measure, and off we went on our way back to Belfast, and that was the end of our time on the quiz. Or maybe it wasn't. A week or so later, my school received a phone call from the national broadcasting company that we're referring to inform us that there was a mistake in the score calculation in the previous round, and we in fact had actually won.
Wow!
We were back in, and so we were now into the semi-finals, and this time it was in Glasgow. That fixture was a somewhat easier contest, and the quiz was pretty much over before we got to the buzzer round. After a couple of questions in the buzzer round, I realised that some of the questions were quite familiar and that I had heard or possibly read them before. And it was then I realised that whilst all the questions in the earlier rounds were different, all the questions being asked in the buzzer round were all contained in the script I had been given in the previous round when we thought we were out by that kind and very naturally sexy presenter.
When did that come up?
I don't know where that came from.
No.
I managed to answer a good number of questions in the buzzer round. Well, I did know all the answers, and we won comfortably. As we were now through to the final, I now had a dilemma. Do I own up and admit that I had sight of some of the questions, or do I stay quiet and hope that there would be some of the questions contained in the script that would also be in the final? Well, to everyone's surprise, I chose the latter. The final was another trip, and we were pitted against a Welsh school whose team included a pupil whose pop knowledge was simply unbelievable. And as we got to the final round, we were lagging well behind on the scoreboard. The only thing that we could hope for was putting a bit of a gloss on the defeat by clawing some points back in the buzzer round. As the up-and-coming DJ started asking the questions, I was delighted that yet again the questions being asked were contained in my secret copy of the script.
Yes.
I quickly pressed the buzzer, furiously answering question after question, impressing my teammates with unfeasibly quick response times and knowledge of obscure pop music facts. Infuriatingly, the other team actually got some questions as well, despite me knowing the answers. We were well beaten in the end. However, my performance in the last round took the bad look off the score and really impressed my teammates and school friends. This secret has stayed with me for many, many years. However, I now wish to ask for forgiveness, not to the other teams in the competition, as both contests weren't decided on the buzzer round, not to the up-and-coming DJ or the national radio station involved, or perhaps having an advantage with some of the questions. They messed up the scores in the earlier round, and then they gave me the questions. I would like to apologise to my teammates and school friends who for years thought that I was a pop music genius. But actually, I believe this up-and-coming DJ did okay for himself in his career and still broadcasts to this day, and this script scandal didn't hold him back. Martin in Belfast, and there's a photograph here of Martin in Belfast with the up-and-coming DJ.
Yes, the up-and-coming DJ. There he is.
It looks a bit like me, but
it does.
I do remember that, and I also remember that although I realise he's not going to come out of this particularly well. The show was produced by Mark Radcliffe.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, so it's Mark's fault.
Oh, right. We're passing it on to him, are we? I thought it was you that gave him the script.
Well, that is also true, and I did do that. So basically, it's my fault. That's entirely correct.
A little bit.
But Martin is asking for forgiveness because he has allowed the impression to fester that he is fantastic at pop, whereas actually he's not. Sister Suze.
Well, yes, I kind of hear what Martin says, what he's doing, and you know, I know he says that they weren't won on the buzzer round in each of those rounds, but essentially you cheated, didn't you? Really, you knew the answers and you didn't do it once, you did it twice. You could have said after the first thing, oh, by the way, you gave me the answers when you gave me the script, and therefore they would have been changed. But also, I think whoever was writing the questions was probably a bit lazy as well, wouldn't they? They should have done a bit more research.
It's the system, I think, that was
on their system. But I think essentially he cheated, and you know, he should have just done a bit of research and got his pop knowledge a bit better.
Yeah, big cheater.
In the start.
That's what he is.
So yeah, big cheater.
Matthew, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say he didn't really cheat. I mean, it wasn't as if he broke into the broadcaster headquarters, Tom Cruise style, and ran off with all of the answers. He was given them, wasn't it, by the up and coming DJ, and surely, and there's somewhat the onus being on the production assistant who should have come up with Mark Radcliffe. Should have come up with some different questions, shouldn't you, Mark? Should have come up with some different ones. So maybe it's on him. And also he had to be really good at knowledge there to get there where he was in the first place. So really nothing to forgive. Yes, definitely forgiving.
Okay, it's the people's verdict. Please, do you forgive Martin in Belfast? 61054. Just before the news, a confession from Martin in Belfast about how he was on the Radio 1 quiz Pop of the Form.
That's the one.
Hosted by myself.
Yes.
And he cheekily asked me for a copy of the script with the quiz questions, which were then, once he was readmitted into the quiz, very useful for all the other rounds. I think I'm completely not guilty of anything.
Really? You think that?
Martin is a bit of a cheat. But anyway, it was a good old story. Martin, thank you very much indeed for coming clean after all these years. He was confessing to his teammates that he's not quite the pop brain that everyone thought he was. People's verdict is in. Here we go.
So Mike in St Ives says 100% forgiven. If you're given the answers, of course you're going to use them to help you win. You'd be ridiculous not to.
So.
Jackie, though, says not forgiven. Can't believe he cheated on a school pop quiz. Not sportsmanlike behaviour at all. But Eddie in Edinburgh says, I was going to forgive even before Matt gave away who the up-and-coming DJ was.
Yes.
Martin clearly undertook some diligent preparation by studying the material he'd been given, not cheating, just swatting.
Swatting is exactly right. Okay, Martin, thank you very much indeed for your confession. You get the smart speaker. Thank you for the verdicts that you sent in as well. And so your confession, please. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. I should have realised it was $18.99.
Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Time for some refreshment then from the drinks trolley. What do you have, Suze?
Well, I've got a wine. It's a rosé wine, and it's, Matt will help me on the pronunciation here, a Gran Ferdo wine.
How's it spelled?
It's Cerdo, but I believe that's
Ferdo. Yeah.
A Ferdo.
The big pig.
The big pig, yeah. It's
It's rude.
Rosé Rioja. It has got a big pig on the label,
There you go.
so I think that's fine. But yeah, it's very delicious, nice and fruity, lovely.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. A couple of glasses for later on. Today's confession comes from George. brackets, that's my middle name. Father Simon and the effervescently forgiving collective. I've been burdened with the way to this unfortunate episode in my life for 20 years. And now fall at your feet hoping for a glimmer of redemption. In early 2004, I'd started a new job as a groundsman for a local tree surgery company. After a couple of weeks, one weekend, I was attending a birthday party in our village and I got into conversation with a neighbour called Larry. I was rather exultantly telling him how pleased I was with my new life and how fit and healthy I felt as I filled our glasses with whiskey. Now, unbeknownst to me, I discovered that along with his many other talents, Larry was a rower. Not just any old rower, but the chairman of a local rowing club nearby. Father Simon, I am tall, 6'4" and gangly. Never been into sports and not a competitive bone in my body. But apparently, according to drunk Larry, tall and scrawny is perfect for rowing. So there and then, at that moment, somehow I got press-ganged into joining a rowing club. I arrived the next day. Larry was full of beans. He wasn't the only one. The place was a hive of enthusiastic, welcoming smiles, and Simon, I loved it. I got to choose a time slot that suited me, and Larry dutifully and patiently went about showing me how to get in and out of my skull without pitching headfirst into the icy depths. Within 3 short weeks, I'd taken off my stabilizers and got my rhythm going and was happily turning up at 10 a.m. to keenly row up and down the river, feeling pleased as punch. Never once did I take a plunge. As the weeks flashed by and the weather became more clement, things just got better and better. The river became more and more beautiful as the banks became green. The overhanging trees burst into... get on with it. It was blissful, and I couldn't imagine a nicer way to spend my Saturday mornings. And then there was a girl, and she was called Amy. Amy had the same time slot allocated to her as I did. Hers overlapped mine by half an hour. It meant that for half an hour every week, I shared the river with her and only her. The rowable section of the river is not that long, about 1.5 miles, and in places it bends and gets narrower, so one rower goes downstream as the other goes up, obviously passing each other at some point along the way. Now, Father Simon, a single-person scull has a major design flaw. You row facing backwards. You have nobody facing forwards, and it's fast, especially fast when going downstream. So there you are, hurtling backwards as fast as you can on a bendy river with an occasional glance over your shoulder being your only navigational aid. Anyway, back to Amy. She was very, very, very pretty, but had a disgustingly handsome boyfriend who strutted around the clubhouse in very tight clothing. However, she was a joy to share the river with, and with every time we crossed, she greeted me with a beautiful smile and a hiya. And I returned a greeting with a rehearsed smile, and I looked cool. Then for the duration that we rowed away from each other, I'd vainly attempt to look fitter and younger than I actually am, until one of us went round a bend, at which point I just let it all drop. So there the stage is set. It's a lovely late summer's day, a Saturday morning as normal. The university types who are positively dripping with muscles and untainted enthusiasm about how wonderful they were. They were around, and I hung about until they'd shoved off and was happy to have the place to myself. I did my stretches, got my place, and using my oars carefully pushed myself off. Well, after a couple of warm-up lengths, I started upping my pace. The current was reasonably fast this day, so getting upstream was quite hard work. However, coming downstream was fun, and the riverbank whooshed past as I constantly checked over my shoulder where I was going. And it happened at the bend. Checking over my right shoulder, I saw a familiar head of shining blonde hair materialize. Glancing over my left shoulder, I noticed the bank getting closer, which meant I was coming into the bend. Fixing a winning smile, I made the adjustment and pulled on my oars. We crossed on the bend. I looked over to Amy with my winning smile and was greeted with her normal radiant smile back at me. "Hiya, you all right?" she said. At that moment, I was all right. A little distracted, but was good. And then something changed. Her face contorted. It wasn't a smile anymore. She was laughing. What could she be laughing at? I realized that in my hesitation, I'd not checked over my left shoulder. I whipped my head around, and it was true. I was very close to the shore, but I was going fast. I wildly dug my right-hand oar into the water and pulled the scull around. It was fine, but I wasn't going to hit the bank. And it was at this point that I noticed many strange things. Looking at my oar, I noticed that there was a strange powdery substance floating on the water surface. Indeed, there was a sort of thick, hazy dustiness hanging in the air. What is that? I'd stopped rowing and I looked to my left. I thought, what on earth are those old people standing on the riverbank for? And why are they dressed so formally? And what is that man doing standing at the water's edge? And why do they look so upset with me? And what actually is this funny taste in my mouth?
Oh, no.
My oars sagged. Open-mouthed, I just sat there panting at the mercifully quick current dragging me away, and the dusty remnants, they went away too. Because, Father Simon, as my mind processed what had just happened, I realised I had inhaled a dead person.
What?
They had been throwing ashes of a loved one into the river.
My goodness me.
And I had inhaled half of it. I half choked, half gagged and and laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a mirthful laugh. It was just a response to a ludicrous situation. In my weak defence, how could I have known? I drifted and rather soullessly rowed the short distance back to the club. The wind in my sails extinguished. I disembarked, rather frantically dusting myself off. And then I had a very, very long shower.
Oh, dear.
It's an image that has never left me and a taste I will never forget.
No.
And I never rowed again. Who do I seek forgiveness from? Well, I'm genuinely sorry. I hope that in time the old people they got to see the funny side of it. In the end, the person whose ashes were being scattered really did get the last laugh. Thank you for reading my sorry tale. Well, and poor old Amy got forgotten there. I thought it was going to be some kind of catastrophe with Amy, but no, it's a dead person. Well, it took an unexpected twist. What do you say, Sister Suze?
Well, George, I'm on his side, really. Like, how are you supposed to see where you're going if you're facing the wrong way? So I do think maybe there is a slight design flaw, but I feel like he was too distracted by Amy to pay attention to what he should be doing, and he didn't look over his other shoulder, and therefore, if he had, he would have seen them, and I don't think I can forgive him for that reason.
Yes, it's the elderly mourners who might have been annoyed, I suppose. But what do you say, Brother
Yeah,
Matthew?
I didn't see that one coming at all. Neither did George, as it turned out.
No.
But isn't sure. I mean, why are they're scattering the ashes a bit willy-nilly, aren't they? I mean, they know that all these rowers keep coming past. It's the run. It's where the rowers always row, and yet they've gone out there and they've tossed about with the ashes, and then of course your man has caught it in his face. So that's not on. So I'm on his side there, very much forgiving. A bit sad that the Amy thing didn't happen. I was thinking that was going to be a nice meet cute, as the kids call it, but it turns out it didn't. She went off with Skinny Man and his dripping muscles. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive. Yes.
Okay, fine. Do you forgive? 61054. I can't remember what Matt's saying. 61054. Before the news, we had a confession from George. It was a rowing confession, and he's on a river. He's distracted by the gorgeous Amy. Didn't really notice where he was going, and rode through an ashes scattering ceremony, which was fairly disastrous, and George never rowed again. The people's verdict, here it comes.
So Stuart says, forgiven. Poor guy, no forgiveness needed. He was just minding his own business rowing away, and they threw ashes in his face. I feel sorry for the dead person being thrown onto a rower. Anonymous says, as someone who works for a crematorium, I know all too well that when scattering ashes, care needs to be taken to assess the wind conditions. I've often ended up covered in ash. For this reason and the awful thought of ash in my mouth, I forgive. It wasn't intentional, and having to swallow and wash human ashes off yourself sounds traumatic enough. And finally, Sam says, forgiven. He should have looked over his shoulder, but equally, the people scattering the ashes should have been more aware of rowers going past. Incidentally, I laughed so suddenly and loudly that the person sitting next to me on the bus has changed seats. Lol.
Very good. Thank you very much for the verdict. Send your confessions, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Something else from the drinks trolley, maybe, that we haven't had before. What delight do you have for us today, Suze?
Well, we definitely haven't had this before. How about a cactus juice and papaya ghost sour beer?
Could I have a Tuborg?
Oh.
A what? A
It's
cactus?
nice. It's basically prickly pear. So it's pear and papaya ghost sour. It's a German sour beer. It's very tasty.
Okay, very good. Is it strong or?
4.4%, so
All right,
not really.
Okay. Well, thank you for that interesting and challenging suggestion. Today's confession comes from Gary, and Gary gets the smart speaker, also a place on the podcast, which will be with you on Friday. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective. It's the summer of 1976.
Of course.
I've changed names and locations just in case. Being an only child from the age of 5 to 11, I spent the school holidays with my grandparents in, well, let's say Trumpton. My large collection of 1970s comics came mainly from my holidays with them. This is Dandy, Beano, Whizzer and Chips, that kind of thing. As well as my love for canned fruit and ice creams, all date from this period. By the time I was about 8, I had befriended a lad called Ben, who lived 3 doors away from my grandparents and was a couple of years older than me. We had some great summer fun, like the time we decided to have a test match in my grandparents' front garden using a real cricket ball. Unfortunately, the slip cordon wasn't that great, and the match was abandoned when the ball was edged through the glass pane of the front door. Or the occasion when we were playing pitch and putt in the back garden with a real golf ball. Again, this time the game was also called off when the ball went through the lounge window. It was a good job that I was their favourite grandchild, also their only grandchild, so that narrowed it down a bit and made it more helpful. Being in a rural setting, the secondary school in Trumpton had pupils from the surrounding area, so apart from Ben, I didn't know anyone else. So to the summer of 1976, the school holidays for me started a week earlier than Ben's, so that meant I was around for the Trumpton Secondary School Fete. The school was only 10-minute walk away, so with a pocket full of change, off I went to the fete on my own, different times. I arrived with about an hour of the fete left. There was a multitude of stalls, mostly being run by the teachers and an unlucky few pupils that had been roped in to help. The stalls included Name the Bear, which is an odd one, I think, Splat the Rat, Tombola, Jumble Stall, Cake Stall, Fishing for Pop, and How Many Marbles Were There in the Jar, which is kind of self-explanatory, really. You had a jar, and then you had some marbles. They were just some of the stalls. There was also a planned dancing display, followed by the awards and prizes at the end of the afternoon. First stop then was the Tombola. Picking out a raffle ticket, 5p a go, and a ticket ending in 0 or 5 being a winner. After a couple of goes, I won a key ring. My next target was the Fishing for Pop stall, with the first person to get the ring on their fishing rod over the neck of a bottle of pop. The bottles were quite fluorescent back then. Orangeade, limeade, cola, and my favourite, cherryade. As I had arrived a bit later to the fete, not all 6 fishing rods were taken, increasing my odds of winning. First go, no luck. I just couldn't properly line up the ring to the bottleneck. Second go, with the winner of the last game departing, it left 4. With a bit of luck and judgment, I won, and I proudly walked away with my glowing bottle of cherryade, radioactive for certain. I had a bit of a wander round, ended up at the Guess the Marbles in the Jar stall. It was 10p a guess, the prize being £5 for the nearest guess. It was quite a large jar, Father Salmon, like the large pickle jars that could be found at a fish and chip shop. When I picked it up, it was quite heavy, turned it around, gave it a little shake. I thought, there's a lot of marbles in there. And at that moment, the number 423 popped into my head. I'd paid the 10p, I wrote my guess and the name on a sheet of paper and had a 30-minute wait for the awards and prizes to be given out. I used up the rest of my money on a fairy cake and an iced pop, and then it was time. The prizes were handed out. The bear's name being Barnaby, who was to know, and then it was the marbles in the jar competition, and the number was 423.
Wow, spot
My
on.
name was called,
nice.
and I popped up on stage, shook the headmaster's hand, and he gave me £5. What a great afternoon. Make me a winner in the 1980s.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
Now for the confession. 423, I have to say, wasn't a random number. It was the exact number of marbles that Ben and I had counted into the jar the previous day. Ben had been responsible for the marbles in the jar and then had to be on the stall during the fete. He split the money and we were able to buy a couple of new Scalextric cars to run on our Brands Hatch layout that we had in my grandparents' garden. I asked forgiveness for all the other people that put down their guesses, as we had pretty much rigged the competition. Although looking back, I'm not sure that we ever considered the scenario where someone else guessed the exact number. Luckily for us, that never happened. There are a couple of side confessions regarding my grandparents' dog, Sandy, real name, around the time of this confession regarding the Trumpton School cockerel and a Welsh sheep, but maybe that's for another time.
Yes, definitely.
I think that probably is
I
for
think
another
so.
time, but I'm already intrigued, and my guess is that the cockerel didn't come out of it particularly well.
No, they never do.
But I'm guessing here, probably the sheep also doesn't feature very much of a future. Anyway, 423 marbles. Yes, because 423 marbles were counted in the first place. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Well, I've got a few bones to pick with Gary. I think that, first of all, the fact that he picked Cherry Oat over Dandelion and Burdock, which clearly was the best pop that you could have got from the pop man, in my opinion, yes. But then also playing cricket and golf near windows is just danger. What is it with boys? And just, that's so silly. You're going to break things. But essentially, it comes down to the fact that you cheated with the marbles, didn't you, Gary? And I'm going to frown upon it because I don't like cheaters. So for that reason, I don't forgive.
I think what you're saying with the golf is...
Danger!
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. Anyway, Brother Matthew, what do you say to Gary?
I'm going to forgive. Surely it's down to the... Aren't the organisers supposed to make sure that if you're the one involved in putting the marbles into the jar, you don't get to guess how many marbles are in the jar? It's a bit like, we can't go on Make Me a Winner because, we work here.
Yes.
So for that, absolutely it's down to the organisers to say that. And he did guess it right. I mean, he knew, didn't he?
Didn't guess.
So that's all fine. And he was pretty lucky for the rest of the time. So I can see why he had a fabulous time, and maybe don't play golf right next to the grandfather's window, but a little lesson in life, which we've all now learned. So for all of those reasons,
he did cheat though.
He didn't cheat because he knew, didn't he? Not cheating, he knew. It's a completely different thing. I'm glad I made that point.
Yes.
So for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Morals of a sewer rat, as ever. People's verdict, please. That's what we're expecting right now. Forgiveness or no for Gary and his 423 marble. Just before the news, we had a confession from Gary, a summer fate confession, inspired by Dandy, Beano, Whizzer and Chips, and he's at the summer fate, and he guesses the number of marbles in the jar. And the number 423 just occurred to him, except the fact that he had actually counted 423 in with his mate Ben just a few hours earlier. Anyway, the people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
Everyone's forgiving. B in Sheffield says he worked hard counting all those marbles into the jar. Sounds like the £5 was good payment. Vicky in Northampton, forgiven. I agree with Matt. It's surely other people's fault for not being better organised. And personally, I'm seriously questioning parenting practices back in the day. Did they just let their offspring roam wild with no guidance or supervision?
Yes.
And multiple window breakages? And finally, Jane says, forgiven. In the mid-70s, I also had to count the marbles into a jar, and it took forever. Come the fate, I told my brother, it's 867. He paid his 50p over to the lady and wrote down 867. Unfortunately, I'd miscounted, and it was announced that there were 871. Even more unfortunate that someone had guessed 870 and won. I had to owe my big brother 50p.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the verdicts, and thank you for your confessions. If we use one, you get a smart speaker. Send yours, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Nigel will be with us just after 6 o'clock. Meantime, let's clear the palate with something tasty from the drinks trolley. What are you choosing for us today?
Well, I'm ignoring the weather outside and pretending that we're in the sunshine on a beach. You might have had a margarita, but have you had a kiwi strawberryta?
No, of course not. That
Yeah.
Oh, what? Kiwis and strawberries?
Yeah, so it's a margarita, tequila, lime juice, triple sec, but added kiwi and strawberries. The taste of summer. Yeah.
Can I have a bit of lemon? Okay,
Yes,
thank you. Today's confession comes from Bert. Of course it does. Father Simon and the Celestial Collective. My confession dates back to the mid-1970s when, as a student looking for a summer job, I found myself engaged as a member of the maintenance team at a textile mill in Bollington on the edge of the Pennines in Cheshire. We're being quite specific.
We are.
Wow, that is very specific.
Yeah, I know. The maintenance team, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, was an eclectic mix of long-serving time wasters who used their years of experience to avoid any kind of meaningful labour and who viewed a long-haired student in their midst with some considerable suspicion. The average working day consisted mainly of a few minutes' work interspersed with lengthy lunch breaks and tea breaks, so not unlike university, really. Anyway, this being the summer, the mill closed down for 2 weeks so that everyone could go on holiday and key maintenance work could be carried out. The mill machinery was run by a huge boiler, which had to be constantly fed with coal. Imagine the firebox of a steam train, but 10 times bigger. Every summer, the maintenance team had to walk inside the brick-lined oven and sweep soot from the walls, floor and ceiling, following which we needed to crawl out of the back of the oven to sweep the increasingly narrowing pipework that took smoke from the oven into the massive mill chimney.
It's like the Victorian time.
It's like a confession from 1840.
Exactly.
As the brickwork was so hot, this work was saved until the very last day of the mill shutdown to allow the bricks to cool as much as possible. These being the days before health and safety considerations, the equipment for this task consisted of wooden blocks for knees and elbows and a hand brush with severely limited bristle coverage, no protective clothing, no face masks.
Wow.
You get the general idea. This is dirty work. Given that this work would need to take place on a Sunday, I was volunteered for the job with Walter, one of the stalwarts of the maintenance crew. Walter was an interesting character and an equally interesting shape. Imagine one of those sea mines that you see at a seaside resort. He was roughly the same shape, but with arms and legs instead of explosive spikes. He was as wide as he was tall, and his shape is relevant for the story.
Okay.
Anyway, with the mill completely still and silent apart from Walter and me, we clambered into the brick oven and started brushing and sweeping. As you can imagine, within a few seconds, we were completely black, just eyes visible from a coating of soot. Once the oven was clean, we went into the pipework. I can honestly say that if you're looking for the definition of absolute blackness, this was it. I went in first, initially crawling and then later lying on my back, trying to brush all around me with my 3 or 4 bristles. It was hot and extremely uncomfortable, but time was passed by Walter regaling me with tales of his time as a paratrooper in the war. He volunteered as a way of being allowed out of military prison.
Okay.
This is getting like a whole movie in here.
Yeah.
And then the
goodness.
storytelling abruptly stopped, to be replaced by a good deal of grunting and swearing. Are you okay, Walter? I asked, and the answer I got was that no, Walter was not okay. He was,
No.
and I quote here, flipping stuck, or words to that effect. I am completely wedged in, he said. Trying to keep calm, I asked Walter, who knew that we were here inside the chimney, Trying to keep calm, I asked Walter, who knew that we were here inside the chimney?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other maintenance men, said Walter. But the bad news was that they didn't arrive until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. The even worse news was that the boiler would be switched on at 3 o'clock in the morning to light up the oven to get the machinery running after the holiday break.
Well,
This actually is a movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
As I was the wrong side of Walter, I told him that there was no option but for me to try and kick him free. I told him rather optimistically to try to cover his head with his hands, but he reminded me that his flipping arms were pinned down his flipping sides and he couldn't flipping move them. No. And so there was no alternative but to wriggle back down the pipework and start kicking Walter on his head
Oh, what?
Ouch.
and shoulders in utter total blackness. After a couple of minutes that seemed like hours, I finally landed a telling blow on Walter's head and he moved a fraction down the pipe. I doubt that Walter had ever descended a parachute jump faster than he escaped out of the oven to freedom. I were like a cork coming out of a champagne bottle. I think I should probably have done. I were like a cork coming out of a champagne bottle.
Oh, nice.
A little
Like
bit
it a
rash.
lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Lovely.
scrambled out after him, and amazingly, we both saw the funny side. More out of relief than anything else, because a few minutes earlier, things had been looking black in every single respect. What with the oven being switched on and us up the chimney. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness not for the bruises on Walter's head and shoulders, but from the owners and workers at the mill, who no doubt spent the next 12 months wondering why it was that the smoke coming out of the chimney was not as plentiful as before, and why the boiler didn't seem to be working quite as efficiently, and potentially losing the owners some of their profits and the workers some of their bonuses until the pipework was cleaned again the following year. Suffice to say, this also marked the end of my career as a maintenance man. As I can imagine that experience, nice fade and crossfade there.
I thought so.
Yeah, lovely, lovely.
Well, we have quite a few of those confessions. So needless to say, this was the last time I was
Yes.
rowing, or the last time I was a maintenance man. A shocking story from the 19th century / the 1970s. Sister Susie.
Well, I'm not surprised it was the last time Bert was a maintenance man. That sounds absolutely terrifying. I don't know why Walter was chosen to go up that chimney, because if he was as wide as it was tall, I'm going to say that's probably not the best job for Walter.
It's the system, really.
Yeah, well, I kind of think it is the system, because surely apparently tall, skinny people are the best people
Correct.
to go and clean chimneys, and that must have been terrifying. So I just think you shouldn't have been doing it. Danger! Up a chimney.
Up a chimney.
I
Here
haven't
it
got
comes.
that one.
Wow, this is smooth. Yeah.
No,
You haven't got it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
danger
You
up a
have.
chimney.
Up a chimney? No.
Okay.
Brother Matthew.
Doesn't matter.
So yes, I'm going to forgive because and also he's wanting forgiveness from the managers. The managers don't need any.
They sent him up there.
Yeah, they sent him up there. What are they doing? As Sue says, why are you sending the big fella up the chimney? At least the Victorians send kids up there, and they're small. So
That's all right then.
maybe maybe it wasn't such a
still
great
not.
idea,
No.
but still at least they're small and not big like Walter. So yes, all things considered, definitely forgiven.
Okay, I believe this is what we were looking for.
Danger.
My chimney. Oh,
No.
that's all there was.
Right.
Okay, so just a little short one. Okay, the people's verdict, please, for Bert. Do you forgive him for his shocking industrial 19th century tale? 61054 on the text. First word is Simon. But just before the news, an industrial Victorian confession involving a couple of people getting stuck in a pipe. But thankfully, at the last minute, just before the ovens were turned on, they managed to work it out. Basically, Bert kicking his way
Yes.
to freedom. The people's verdict is in. Here we go.
And everyone forgives. Forgiven, says Michael. Why was Walter chosen to go up the chimney? Someone short and wide isn't going to cut it.
Correct.
Kat says forgiven. I'm sat here at my office desk and I count my lucky stars. I'm not stuck up a chimney covered in soot. And Corrine in Buxton says forgiven for giving me such a hilarious visual after a very long day with no lunch.
Maybe you have an industrial kind of old-fashioned confession from a job that doesn't exist anymore
Yeah.
or something like that. They would be good. Confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. If you're a fan, then we would love to get you on the podcast. So send us your confession to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.